My beloved child, pause here for a moment, because what you are about to hear has reached you at a time when your heart may be trying to understand something your eyes cannot fully explain. Do not rush past this message. Do not let the first appearance of the situation convince you that you already know how this story ends. Something has shifted around the person you hold close in your heart, and from where you stand, it may seem as though their attention has moved towards someone else. Their energy may feel different. Their silence may feel heavier. Their distance may have made you wonder whether another person has stepped into the space you once believed belonged only to you. But before your heart decides that you have been replaced, Heaven asks you to remain still long enough to hear what has actually been unfolding beneath the surface, because the truth is more complicated, more emotional, and far more revealing than the appearance you have been given. There has been a moment recently when your soulmate questioned everything they thought they understood about love. They did not tell you about it. They did not know how to put it into words. Instead, they carried the confusion quietly, almost as if they were afraid that speaking it aloud would make it permanent. Someone entered their emotional world at a vulnerable time, not necessarily with dramatic intentions, but with a certain kind of attention that your soulmate was not expecting. This person listened when your soulmate felt misunderstood. They appeared at moments when loneliness had become difficult to ignore. They offered conversation, comfort, distraction, perhaps even admiration. And slowly, your soulmate began wondering whether the ease they felt around this person meant something deeper. That question frightened them more than you know, because although another connection seemed to be forming, there was still one presence they could not remove from their heart. Yours. This is where the story begins to turn in a direction no one around them can see yet. Your soulmate has been comparing what feels easy with what feels meaningful, and those are not always the same thing. The new attention may have brought temporary relief. It may have made them feel wanted, noticed, even appreciated. But when the room becomes quiet, when the conversation ends, when there is no one left to impress and no distraction left to hide behind, their thoughts keep returning to the history, emotional depth, and unfinished truth connected to you. This has created an inner conflict they have tried desperately to suppress. They have asked themselves why they can laugh with someone else and still feel your absence immediately afterward. They have wondered why a kind message from another person can brighten a moment, yet one memory of you can change the atmosphere of an entire night. They thought a new connection might simplify what they were feeling. Instead, it has made the truth inside them louder. There is something else you need to understand. Your soulmate has not been only choosing between people. They have been choosing between two versions of themselves. One version wants a relationship that asks very little of their emotional courage. It wants comfort without vulnerability, closeness without difficult conversations, affection without having to confront old wounds. The other version knows that genuine love requires honesty, growth, accountability, and the willingness to be fully seen. Your connection represents that deeper path. That is part of why it has frightened them. You awakened emotions they could not control through logic. You reflected parts of them they had avoided. You made them question patterns they thought they would carry forever. So when another person appeared offering something lighter, less complicated, and easier to understand, a part of your soulmate wondered whether choosing easy would finally bring them peace. But peace did not come. At first, they may have mistaken novelty for certainty. New conversations can feel exciting because they are free of history. There are no old misunderstandings to repair, no painful memories to revisit, no expectations created by deep attachment. Everything feels clean because nothing has yet been tested. Your soulmate noticed that difference, and for a short time, they may have allowed themselves to believe that this was exactly what they needed. Yet slowly, details began revealing themselves. The more they spoke to this person, the more they noticed what was missing. They could share stories, but something inside remained guarded. They could receive attention, but it did not reach the same hidden place. They could imagine possibilities, but those possibilities did not carry the emotional gravity they once associated with you. Most importantly, they discovered that changing the person in front of them did not automatically change the unresolved feelings inside them. There was one particular moment that affected them deeply. It may have happened at night, during an ordinary conversation, while hearing a song, seeing a place, reading a message, or remembering something unexpectedly. They were with their thoughts, perhaps even with the other person, when something reminded them of you so strongly that their emotional defenses cracked for a moment. They did not announce it. They may not even have allowed themselves to fully acknowledge it. But suddenly, they remembered the way you understood something about them without needing an explanation. They remembered a moment when you looked at them and they felt genuinely seen. They remembered words you once said that seemed small at the time but now carried a completely different meaning. And in that moment, they realized something uncomfortable. They had been trying to measure a deep bond against a new feeling, and the two were not as comparable as they had told themselves. My child, this does not mean that every concern you have imagined is meaningless. Your soulmate has been emotionally confused. There has been genuine curiosity surrounding someone else. There may have been attraction, admiration, or the beginning of feelings they did not expect. This message is not asking you to pretend those things could never exist. True spiritual strength does not come from denying reality. It comes from seeing reality clearly without allowing fear to write conclusions before the full truth appears. What matters now is that your soulmate is beginning to recognize the difference between being drawn towards someone and being deeply connected to someone. Attraction can arrive quickly. Emotional escape can feel powerful. But the kind of love that changes a person leaves fingerprints on the soul long after the moment itself has passed. And your fingerprints are still there. They have tried to understand why. They have replayed arguments, silences, beautiful moments, disappointments, and everything they wish they had handled differently. They have remembered times when they thought you were asking too much, only to realize later that perhaps you were asking for honesty. They have remembered moments when they pulled away because emotional intensity made them uncomfortable. They have wondered whether they mistook your depth for pressure, your sensitivity for weakness, or your desire for clarity as something they needed to escape. These reflections are becoming harder for them to avoid, because another connection has acted like a mirror. It has shown them what feels pleasant, yes, but it has also forced them to recognize what was uniquely alive between the two of you. Still, something is holding them back from immediately turning toward you. This is the part your heart needs to hear carefully. Your soulmate carries shame around certain choices they have made. They fear that if they return, speak honestly, or reveal their confusion, you may see them differently. They are afraid that the very truth capable of repairing the distance could also be the truth that causes you to close the door. So they remain caught between silence and confession. They wonder whether you would understand the emotional loneliness that influenced them. They wonder whether you would believe that a moment of uncertainty does not erase everything they once felt. They wonder whether they have already damaged something sacred by allowing another person's presence to become emotionally important. These questions are creating a pressure inside them that is growing day by day. But there is another reason they hesitate, and this reason may surprise you. They do not know where you stand anymore. Your silence, your strength, your changing energy, or simply the way you have learned to protect your heart has made them wonder whether you have already moved beyond them. They have noticed that they can no longer assume you will always be waiting. They may sense that you are becoming less available to confusion. Perhaps you are no longer chasing explanations. Perhaps you are beginning to value your peace more deeply. Perhaps something in you has grown quieter, stronger, and more self-respecting. Your soulmate can feel this shift even if they cannot describe it, and instead of making them forget you, it has made them more afraid of losing their place in your life. This is why they have been watching from a distance more than you realize. They may be wondering what you are doing, whether you are happy, whether someone else has noticed your heart, whether you still think about them, whether the connection still matters to you at all. They may act detached, but inwardly there is curiosity. They may present themselves as certain, but there are questions beneath their confidence. And every time they imagine you truly moving on, something inside them tightens. Not because they believe they own your love, but because the possibility of your absence forces them to confront what they have been avoiding. It is one thing to step away from someone when you secretly believe they will remain emotionally available. It is entirely different to realize that the person you once took for granted may eventually choose peace over waiting. The other person has begun sensing this conflict too. They may not know the full story, but people can feel when someone's heart is divided. They can sense when a conversation suddenly becomes distant. They can notice when certain topics create silence. They can recognize when the person beside them is physically present but emotionally somewhere else. Your soulmate has tried to hide this, yet small signs are becoming impossible to conceal. A hesitation when discussing the future. A change in mood when relationships are mentioned. A strange sadness after moments that should feel happy. An unwillingness to fully surrender to the new possibility. These details are beginning to create tension, and soon someone may ask the question your soulmate has been avoiding. Is there still someone else in your heart? When that question comes, the answer will not be simple. Your soulmate has spent so much time trying to convince themselves that they should move forward that they have not prepared themselves for what honesty might require. If they say no, they will know they are hiding something. If they say yes, they will have to face the consequences of admitting that the connection with you is still alive inside them. This is why their emotional world has become more unstable recently. They are approaching a moment when pretending will become harder than telling the truth. Do not misunderstand what heaven is revealing. You are not being asked to compete. You are not being told to prove that you are better than another person. Real love does not require you to stand in an invisible contest begging to be chosen. Your worth was never reduced because someone became confused. Your value did not disappear because another person received attention. The deepest lesson unfolding now is not only about what your soulmate will choose. It is also about what you will choose when the truth finally reaches you. Will you choose from fear, or from dignity? Will you accept words without changed behavior simply because you missed them? Will you allow longing to erase the boundaries you learned through pain? Or will you recognize that love can be compassionate without becoming careless with your heart? These questions matter because your soulmate's return, if it comes, cannot be the only transformation in this story. Something has been changing within you too. You have spent too much time wondering whether you were enough, whether you said the wrong thing, whether you should have tried harder, whether someone else possessed some quality you lacked. But heaven wants you to release that comparison. The lesson here has never been that another person was more worthy. Sometimes people run toward what feels less emotionally demanding because they are not yet prepared for what genuine intimacy awakens within them. Your soulmate is learning this now. They once believed that the strongest feeling would be excitement. They are discovering that the strongest feeling may actually be recognition. The quiet recognition that there was something real with you. Something imperfect, complicated, unfinished, but real. Something that cannot simply be recreated by replacing the face across the table. Something they may have undervalued because it was emotionally challenging. And now, with distance creating perspective, certain memories are beginning to appear differently. A conversation they once dismissed now feels significant. A sacrifice you made quietly now seems larger. A boundary you set now makes more sense. A moment they thought was ordinary now carries tenderness. They are seeing your love through the lens of possible loss, and that lens changes everything. There is also a secret thought your soulmate has not shared with anyone. Deep inside, they have wondered whether the new connection appeared not because it was meant to replace you, but because it was meant to expose what they still had not healed. They are beginning to notice familiar patterns repeating. Avoidance. Fear of commitment. Difficulty communicating. Pulling away when emotions deepen. Searching for certainty outside themselves instead of creating honesty within themselves. The faces may change, but the pattern remains. And that realization has shaken them because it means the problem was never simply that your connection was too complicated. Some of the complexity was coming from wounds they carried into every emotional bond. This realization is painful, but it is also powerful. For the first time, they may be taking responsibility in a way they did not before. Quietly. Slowly. Imperfectly. They are remembering moments when they blamed timing instead of admitting fear. Moments when they blamed circumstances instead of acknowledging indecision. Moments when they accused the connection of being difficult because they did not know how to communicate their needs. They are seeing that walking towards someone new did not automatically make those patterns disappear. In fact, the new situation may be revealing those patterns more clearly. And now a decision is approaching. Not a dramatic decision made in one emotional night, but a deeper internal choice. Your soulmate must decide whether they will continue choosing what helps them avoid themselves or finally become honest about what their heart has been trying to tell them. They must decide whether they are truly building something new or simply running from something unfinished. They must decide whether the feelings they have developed for someone else represent genuine compatibility or emotional shelter. And above all, they must decide whether they are willing to tell you the truth even if the truth risks changing everything. There is a conversation forming. You may not see it yet. You may not know when it will happen. But your soulmate has begun rehearsing words in their mind. They have imagined reaching out. They have imagined what they would say if you answered. They have imagined your silence, your anger, your calmness, your questions. They have even imagined the possibility that you might tell them they waited too long. That possibility hurts them deeply because they know they cannot expect your life to remain frozen while they search for clarity. Still, something keeps pushing them toward honesty. Perhaps it is the exhaustion of hiding. Perhaps it is the fear of losing you permanently. Perhaps it is the realization that the other person deserves honesty too. Perhaps it is simply that the heart becomes tired of pretending. Whatever the reason, the pressure is building. And there is one detail that makes the coming moment even more important. Your soulmate has recently discovered something about the other person that changed the way they view the entire connection. At first, it seemed small. A comment. A reaction. A difference in values. Something they might normally have ignored. But then another detail appeared, and another. Slowly, your soulmate began recognizing that some of the qualities they initially found comforting may have been based on projection. They were seeing what they wanted to see because they wanted relief from the intensity of their own emotions. As time passed, reality became clearer. The other person is not necessarily bad. This is not a story about a villain. But the compatibility your soulmate imagined may not be as complete as it first appeared. One conversation especially changed the atmosphere. The other person asked your soulmate what they truly wanted from love. Your soulmate gave an answer that surprised even themselves. They described wanting to feel safe enough to be vulnerable. They described wanting someone who understood their silence but also challenged them to speak. They described wanting loyalty that felt calm, not performative. They described wanting a connection where both people could grow without pretending to be perfect. They described wanting someone whose presence felt strangely familiar even after conflict, someone they could imagine talking to years from now after the excitement had settled into real life. And halfway through describing this person, they realized they were describing you. They stopped. The silence after that realization felt enormous. The other person noticed. Your soulmate changed the subject. But the truth had already entered the room. Since then, they have not been able to think about their situation in the same way. Something once hidden behind confusion became visible. They may have feelings for another person, yes, but the deeper qualities they associate with enduring love still lead their mind back toward you. That discovery has created guilt, longing, fear, and urgency all at once. This is why you may soon feel an unexpected shift. A message that seems casual but carries hidden emotion. A question that appears ordinary but is actually testing whether the door is still open. A memory mentioned out of nowhere. An apology that begins cautiously. A conversation that starts with small words because the larger truth feels too frightening to say immediately. If this happens, do not rush ahead emotionally. Listen. Observe. Let actions reveal what words cannot. You do not need to punish them, but you also do not need to rescue them from the consequences of their confusion. Love becomes stronger when truth is allowed to stand in the room without being manipulated by fear. Your soulmate needs to understand that choosing you cannot simply mean leaving someone else. It must mean choosing honesty, choosing maturity, choosing the difficult conversations, choosing consistency after the emotional confession. Choosing to stop running every time intimacy becomes uncomfortable. Anything less would only recreate the same cycle. Heaven is not preparing you to win a competition. Heaven is preparing you to recognize the difference between being wanted and being truly chosen. There is a great difference. Being wanted can happen in a moment of loneliness. Being chosen requires clarity. Being missed can happen when someone feels empty. Being chosen means they are willing to build differently. Being desired can be emotional. Being chosen becomes visible through behavior. Remember this when the story begins moving faster, because your heart may be tempted to interpret every sign as the ending you have been waiting for. But something even more important than reunion is unfolding. Truth is approaching, and truth will reveal not only your soulmate's feelings but their level of readiness. And my child, there is one final thing I must tell you before this part of the message closes. The other person recently asked your soulmate a question about you. Your name had not been expected to enter that conversation. Yet somehow, it did. For several seconds, your soulmate said nothing. The other person watched their face carefully and realized the silence itself was an answer. Then they asked something far more direct. Something your soulmate could no longer avoid. They asked, if this person came back into your life today and asked you to tell the complete truth about everything you still feel, what would you say? Your soulmate looked away. Their heart began racing. And after a long silence, they finally whispered the beginning of an answer that may change what happens next between all three of you. But what they admitted after those first few words was something even they had never dared to say out loud before.